Welcome to Feminine Founder, where we talk all things recruiting, hiring, and entrepreneurship. Today, I have Molly Lorenzi with me. Molly is the owner of Lex Terra Consulting and the co-founder of Envision Initiative. Envision Initiative provides HR and legal consulting services for startups, small to medium-sized businesses, and nonprofit organizations. So welcome, Molly.
Thank you so much for having me, Caroline. Happy to be here.
So I'd love to hear your story behind your career in law and then how you've kind of paralleled and transitioned that into HR and legal consulting now.
Yeah. So, I started law school kind of without really a plan for exactly what I wanted to do. I just mostly wanted the flexibility of having a career in law. And so when I graduated, I had this amazing opportunity to work for a bigger law firm, Shepherd Mullen, where I was in their antitrust and international competition practice group. So in that job, I got to work with some of the biggest companies in their industries, domestic and multinational companies, and got to really see what it's like to work with a company that's operating on that type of scale. I did a lot of agency and government work as part of that. And through my time there, I got to see that really, in my view, what kind of separated those large companies from smaller mom and pop businesses was a lot less than I expected. It mostly was just access to resources that allowed bigger businesses to put more preventative measures in place to make sure that they could kind of stop legal issues in their tracks before really turning into big problems. And then also having the resources to respond really rapidly when something did come up. So I wanted to be able to take that approach to working with smaller businesses and nonprofits, which is more where my heart has kind of always been. And so I launched independently in January of this year with Lex Terra Consulting, providing resources for small businesses and nonprofits, focusing really on corporate governance and employment law. And in the process of launching that business, I reconnected with a friend of mine who has been a human resources consultant for about 25 years. She had also just started an independent consulting business herself, and we initially decided to work together just to maybe put out some workshops in our community about the overlap between legal resources and human resources. And as we worked together, we just had a fantastic time working with each other and decided to start a company on our own. So that's how Envision Initiative was born. So through that company, we are providing strictly human resources consulting, but from both the compliance perspective as well as an engagement perspective to help employees kind of stay engaged and happy with their workplaces. And then I still offer the legal resources through Lex Terra as well.
Between the legal side and the HR side, I'm not a specialist in either. I'm just the recruiter expert here, but I have to attend seminars regularly just to stay up to date, because when I'm talking with people that own businesses, HR professionals in-house, hiring managers directly on, sometimes they'll say, okay, can I ask this or can I ask this? And, a lot of times there's a very obvious heck knows, you may not ask this question. And then there's questions that are always, gray. And so I think it's an amazing concept to blend both with the two of you, with both of y'all's backgrounds. So what challenges and opportunities are you seeing in the market right now with your clients?
So I think kind of the consistent question that we've gotten across the board from most of our clients is, how do we deal with the Gen Z workforce? And this is something that I have really loved talking about. I think the stereotype is that younger, newer entrants to the workforce want a higher paying job and don't want any of the responsibilities and don't want to work hard for it. And so my business partner Nancy and I have been really trying to think through how we can deal with this. And where we've landed is I think this is actually really an opportunity for growth and not so much a negative challenge as a lot of employers are viewing it. Um, for example, I think we see these like TikTok trends like hashtag lazy girl job and hashtag quiet quitting. And I think there is certainly a negative story that can come out of that. But what I'm seeing and what we're seeing with our clients is that this new generation of workers actually isn't lazy or unmotivated. I think they really are just pushing for transparency in a way that hasn't come up so much in prior generations, and are approaching their jobs with kind of a sense of honesty and expectation that they will receive that same honesty from their employer. So for example, if they're in a transition period where they're really just need to get a job so that they can pay rent, but it's maybe not exactly what they want to do with their career, I think they want to be able to be open about that, and also in a corresponding manner want their employer to be open with them about, here's the job, here are the expectations. It's probably not going to take you where you want to go in 10 years, and it's probably not the pay that you want right at this moment, but show up at 8, leave at 5. Here is what you have to do in between. And I think previous workforces and previous generations have had a different story built around what work is, that I think has created a lot of disillusion, because a lot of people have came in with this expectation that they might start at the bottom and be able to work their way up to the top, and we've seen that often doesn't happen. So I think Gen Z has been actually a lot more open and honest about that. And I think there's a real opportunity for employers to jump on that willingness to engage in a dialogue. And that's not to say that it's not without its issues. I know I've seen plenty of my clients who are really frustrated that they conduct 10 interviews and, nobody responds, or they open, they communicate with people to try to hire them for a job and the person doesn't show up the day that they're supposed to. Like, we do see that a lot more, and that is definitely a challenge that I don't want to bypass. But overall, I think this is a cultural moment that's opening up for a much broader conversation about what work is.
I typically work at the executive space, the C-suite area now, but from conversations I've had with other colleagues who work in recruiting who deal with employees that are just coming into the workforce or in their mid-20s and that Gen Z, I think you're right. The transparency piece is so important, because they will be more invested in the opportunity and actually showing up to work for you if they know what's expected to them. And even if it's just hey, we're busy right now, I need somebody to do the work for a couple months. You need a paycheck for a couple months. Okay, let's shake hands and move on. That's been a more successful approach than the opposite.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So you came from a big corporate law firm experience. You got a lot of good experience in that space, and then now you've gone out on your own. What advice would you give to someone who's on the fence about starting their own business?
I love this question. I would say it's definitely going to be more work than you expect. As a small business owner, you need to wear all of the hats all of the time. I was chatting with somebody else who's recently launched out on her own, who used to be with an editor for a big magazine, and we were talking about how in her previous life she had a person for each type of role that she needed to fill. She could just go find that person in the hall and have that person do the work for her, get ad placements, do interviews, kind of whatever it was. And now she's that person who needs to do all of those things. So you're really needing to wear all the hats all the time, especially at the beginning. And as a follow-up to that, I think, and this is something that has really challenged my personality, because I tend to want to be more of a perfectionist and and have a very type A approach. But what I'm learning is that where you start out in your business, especially in the startup phase, is not how you're going to end up. And in this situation, I think progress really is a lot more important than perfection. And so to kind of go in with that mindset and be okay with it, you know, for example, Envision Initiative doesn't have a website yet, and that, you know, from the standpoint of wanting to check off all the boxes of what I know I need to have for my business, that freaks me out. But at the same time, we're booked with clients. We just onboarded our first employee within a month of opening. And so we have, we have the success there, whether or not we have the website. So I think to have that like flexibility and openness is really important.
And you're right, when you work in corporate America, you have, the big fancy HR department that has a team of recruiters or a team dedicated to finding talent for you. But then when you go on your own, you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can employers humanize HR more?
Well, this is something that we have really focused on in putting together our mission for Envision Initiative and our approach. And I think from what I've seen, there's a big focus in HR's role kind of through the recruitment and onboarding process. And a lot of times we see HR kind of stop there. But for us, that's really just the beginning phase. And what comes after an employee comes into their new organization after going through the onboarding process and what HR's role can be moving forward, I think is really important and is a huge missed opportunity in a lot of HR departments. So for example, how, you go through the recruitment, the hiring, the onboarding process, your new employee has joined and is feeling that kind of first day excitement. But what systems are in place to support that new employee in the next 3 months or in the next year? Is there a peer support system in place? Is there a contact for that new hire within the HR department so that they can turn to that person if they have questions that come up, whether they're large or small, whether it's like, how do I get my parking permit validated, or I need to take a leave of absence? I think HR has the potential to be really a keystone position in any organization to bridge management and staff. But often I think the focus is on that management side and how can HR support management and bringing on new people within the company, as opposed to then how can they also be in that position to support on a more ongoing and sustainable basis.
Another touch that HR can have to keeping them engaged, even if it goes from, okay, we onboarded you, we touched, had a touch point one day a week for your first couple weeks, and then it goes to maybe once a month or once every couple months, just so they can still feel comfortable with coming back to HR with any other questions or still feeling engaged.
Yeah.
And so that leads me to the next questions about a lot of times employees have, they're scared to talk to HR for whatever fill in the blank reason. HR is a scary department to them, or they think if HR is coming around, something's wrong, some disciplinary actions coming. What do you suggest to employers about how can they make HR in general more approachable?
Yeah, so I think there are two key parts of this. First is taking a preventative approach. So I think putting HR in a position to be able to address any issues that are coming up in the workplace from a more preventative approach, as opposed to having the like police officer kind of principal mentality where like you said, like you only go to HR when there's an issue. But instead, how can your HR department be more involved in having those ongoing dialogues with employees so that they're more aware, that a particular employee might be planning to take a leave of absence, as opposed to just getting the paperwork the day of and needing to deal with it from then on. So I think prevention is a really important piece of that. And a second piece is something that we have talked about so much in our own company is viewing HR really as an extension of the marketing department in a lot of ways. I think, any organization, rightfully so, focuses a lot of its marketing efforts on the consumer or the client who's actually, purchasing products or services from that company. Um, but we like to encourage our clients to take a more internal approach to marketing and market their business and themselves to their employees. I think HR is really in a key position to be able to do that. So from every touch point that an employee has with that company, how can you make your welcome letter really inviting so that the employee, the new hire, knows immediately, like, this is what this company stands for, this is what the values are. How can you make your employee handbook friendly and easy to read and an actual resource instead of something that just checks a box? Um, and what engagement or team building initiatives can you build in so that your employees get to know each other and get to really feel like they're being part of a team? All of that creates internal marketing for your company that then I think that employees can then put out into the marketplace, and can really be an advocate for the company that they're at. I think about all the time, like when I'm choosing a restaurant to go to, often I'm choosing it based on a particular server or bartender who I really like, who's fun to interact with, often more so than the actual food. Um, so I think HR can take on this actually really fun role of um, of allowing the company to position itself in a way to its employees that then essentially turn employees into salespeople, whether they intend to be that or not.
Way to look at it. I didn't think about it like, it being an advocate, internal and external. And you made the restaurant example. That's a great. I choose restaurants all the time based on my experience that I've had with their staff. So that's a great point you made there.
Yeah, thank you.
So as we wrap up, how can our listeners find you?
So right now, I think LinkedIn is the best place for us, either personally through my page, Molly Lorenzi, or through the company's page, Envision Initiative. We're pushing out weekly newsletters over there, and we have updates kind of on a regular basis. We will have a website coming soon, which will host a store for purchasing templates and also like a whole list of ways to work with us. But in the meantime, LinkedIn is the best place to be.
Okay. And I'll link in show notes for everybody too. Thanks for your time, Molly.
Great. Thank you so much, Caroline. This was a pleasure.